I never believed in ghosts, not even after working 3 years of night shifts in a hospital where half the staff swore they'd seen something. I always figured it was exhaustion, shadows playing tricks on tired minds. But that changed on a Tuesday in October during what should have been just another quiet shift. I'd been assigned to the night rotation at St. Michael's, a small rural hospital that serviced about 4 surrounding counties. The place was built in the 50s, all concrete and narrow hallways that seemed to absorb sound rather than echo it. Most nights were uneventful. A few check-ins, medication rounds, paperwork, the kind of monotony that makes you zone out and question every career choice you've ever made. It was around 2 in the morning when I first noticed the call button light. Panel 3, room B12. I stared at it for a moment, confused because panel 3 corresponded to the basement ward, the old wing, the section that had been closed off for a decade after an electrical fire tore through it, killing a patient and nearly taking out half the building. They'd sealed it off rather than renovate. Too expensive for a hospital that was already struggling with budget cuts. No electricity down there, no patients, no reason for any call button to be working. I thought maybe it was a malfunction, some crossed wire sending a phantom signal. I reset the panel. The light went dark. I went back to my charts, trying to focus on updating patient notes, but my eyes kept drifting back to that board. 10 minutes later, it lit up again. B12. Persistent little thing. I called down to security, asked Mike if he could take a look at it. He was an older guy, former cop, the kind who didn't spook easily. He laughed it off, said he'd check it after his rounds, but I could tell he wasn't thrilled about it either. Everyone knew the stories about the basement. I didn't believe them, but I also didn't like the idea of going down there alone in the middle of the night. Another 20 minutes passed. The light kept coming on. B12, then B14, then B12 again. A pattern, almost rhythmic. I tried to ignore it, but it was like a drip in a silent room. Impossible to tune out. Mike never called back. I texted him. No response. Finally, I grabbed a flashlight from the supply closet and decided to handle it myself. I'd go down, see that it was nothing, and laugh about it later over bad coffee in the break room. The stairwell to the basement was behind a service door most people forgot existed. I had to use my master key to unlock it. The air that rushed out when I opened the door was cold and stale, like opening a crypt. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness below. The walls were water-stained, paint peeling in long strips. I could see the scorch marks from the fire, black streaks that climbed toward the ceiling like reaching fingers. I descended slowly, each step creaking under my weight. The smell hit me halfway down. Antiseptic and mildew, underlaid with something acrid. Old smoke, maybe, trapped in the walls all these years. At the bottom, the hallway stretched out in both directions, patient rooms lining each side. Most of the doors were closed. A few hung open, revealing gutted interiors, empty bed frames, overturned chairs, everything covered in a thick layer of dust. I followed the room numbers, B10, B11, until I reached B12. The door was closed. I put my hand on the handle and paused. From inside, I heard it. A soft, wet cough, the kind that rattles in the chest, followed by a wheeze. My hand froze. There was no one down here. There couldn't be. I told myself it was pipes. Old buildings made all kinds of sounds. I pushed the door open. The hinges screamed. Inside, the room was dark, except for a faint greenish glow coming from the corner. As my eyes adjusted, I saw it. A heart monitor. The screen was on, displaying a steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The sound was tinny, distorted, but unmistakable. I took a step closer, shining my flashlight around the room. The bed was still made, blanket pulled tight across the mattress. On top of it lay a manila patient file, old and yellowed at the edges. I picked it up, my hands were shaking. I flipped it open. The name on the tab read Harold Greaves. I scanned the notes, the doctor's scrawled handwriting barely legible. And then I saw the date at the bottom of the last entry. October 14th, 15 years ago. Cause of death, smoke inhalation, and cardiac arrest during basement ward fire. I dropped the file. It hit the floor with a slap that seemed too loud. The coughing started again. Closer this time, right next to my ear. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the empty room and that damned monitor still beeping. I backed towards the door, not wanting to turn my back on the space. The air had changed. It was thicker now, harder to breathe. And then I smelled it. Smoke. Not the stale remnant of an old fire. Fresh smoke. Sharp and choking. I ran. I didn't care how it looked, didn't care about protocol or professionalism. I bolted out of that room and down the hallway, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls. Behind me, I heard more coughing, overlapping now, coming from multiple rooms. Doors began to creak open, one after another, a slow cascade of sound that followed me to the stairs. I took them two at a time, lungs burning, and burst through the service door into the bright fluorescent safety of the main hospital corridor. I stood there, gasping, hands on my knees, waiting for my heart to stop trying to hammer its way out of my chest. When I finally looked up, Mike was walking towards me with a cup of coffee in his hand, looking completely unbothered. He asked me if I was okay. I told him what happened, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. He frowned, said he'd gone down there right after I called, didn't see anything. No lights, no sounds, nothing. I insisted we'd check the security footage. He seemed reluctant, but agreed. In the security office, we pulled up the feed from the basement stairwell. There I was, clear as day, unlocking the door and heading down. The timestamp read 2:14 a.m. We watched me disappear into the darkness. Mike fast-forwarded. At 3:21 a.m., I emerged, walking calmly, no panic, no running. Over an hour had passed. I stared at the screen, my mouth dry. I'd been down there 5 minutes, 10 at most. I was sure of it. Mike gave me this look, the kind you give someone when you're trying to decide if they're losing it. He suggested I take an early break, maybe go sit down for a while. I nodded, too numb to argue. I never went back to the basement. I never told anyone else what I saw. But sometimes, late in my shift, when the hospital is quiet, and the only sound is the hum of machinery keeping people alive, I catch the smell of smoke. Just a trace. Gone before I can be sure it was ever really there. And I think about Harold Greaves, still coughing in the dark, waiting for someone to notice he never left.
I took the security job at Westfield Plaza because I needed the money and didn't mind working alone. The mall had been closed for 8 months, gutted down to the concrete in most sections, waiting for some investor group to decide whether to renovate or demolish. My job was simple: walk the perimeter twice a night, monitor the camera feeds, make sure no one broke in to steal copper wiring or spray paint the walls. Easy work, quiet work. At least that's what I thought for the first 2 weeks. The motion sensor started going off on my third Monday. Always the same location, Section C, near where the old food court used to be, right by the children's play area. That part of the mall hadn't been touched yet by the renovation crew. The play structure was still there, a faded plastic castle with tunnels and slides, surrounded by those padded floor mats that had gone gray with age and grime. The first time the alarm triggered, I checked the cameras. Nothing. Just empty space and shadows. I marked it down as a malfunction and went back to scrolling through my phone. It happened again an hour later. Same spot. I pulled up the feed and watched more carefully this time. For just a moment, I thought I saw something move behind one of the support pillars near the play area. Small, quick, there and gone before I could be sure. Probably a rat. Old buildings are full of them. But it kept happening. Every single night, Multiple times per shift, the motion sensor for Section C would light up my board. I started watching that camera feed more closely, letting it run on the main monitor while I did my rounds. And that's when I started noticing the patterns. The movements weren't random, they were playful, darting from one spot to another, circling the play structure, disappearing into the tunnels, always small, always fast, too coordinated to be rats. I decided to check it out in person on Thursday night. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and made my way through the empty mall. Without the lights and the crowds and the music, the place felt massive and wrong. My footsteps echoed off the exposed framework and dangling wires. Most of the storefronts were boarded up or blocked by construction barriers. The air smelled like dust and old ventilation, with an underlying chemical tang from whatever they'd used to strip the floors. Section C was at the far end, past the dead fountain and the shuttered arcade. As I got closer, I slowed down, sweeping my flashlight beam across the space. The play area looked even more depressing up close. The castle's bright colors had faded to dull pastels, and someone had tagged one of the towers with spray paint. The floor mats were torn in places, revealing the concrete underneath. I stood there for a minute, listening. The motion sensor was still registering movement, but I didn't see anything. Then I heard it. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Laughter. Children's laughter. High-pitched and echoing, like it was coming from very far away. I turned in a slow circle, trying to pinpoint the source. It seemed to be coming from above. The vents. I aimed my flashlight at the ceiling. The ventilation ducts ran the length of the mall, disappearing into darkness in both directions. The laughter came again, closer this time, bouncing through the metal shafts. It sounded like multiple kids, overlapping voices, playful and excited. My skin went cold. There was no way anyone could be in those vents. They were too small, too difficult to access, and I was the only person in the building. I called out, "Hey, this isn't funny. If someone's in here, you need to come out now." The laughter stopped. Silence pressed in around me, broken only by the hum of my flashlight. I waited, barely breathing. Then from somewhere behind me, I heard the soft patter of small feet running across the floor mats. I spun around, flashlight slicing through the dark. Nothing. The play area was empty. I got out of there. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I walked quickly back to the security office, locked the door, and spent the rest of the night watching the monitors with my heart rate elevated and my radio turned up loud. The motion sensor went off 3 more times before my shift ended. Each time, I saw those same fleeting shapes on camera, moving just out of frame. The next day, I started digging. I searched online for any history about Westfield Plaza, looking for accidents, incidents, anything that might explain what I was experiencing. Most of what I found was mundane. Grand opening in 1984, various ownership changes, declining foot traffic, eventual closure. But then I found a scanned newspaper article from December 1991. The headline read, "Tragedy at Westfield Plaza. Holiday event ends in fire." I read the whole thing twice. A Christmas celebration had been held in Section C, centered around the children's play area. Santa's village, face painting, the works. Sometime around 7 p.m., an electrical fire broke out in the walls near the food court. The ventilation system spread the smoke faster than anyone expected. Most people got out, but several children who'd been playing inside the play castle tunnels didn't. 6 of them, ages 4 to 9. The article listed their names. There was a photo of the play area afterward, charred and water damaged, surrounded by flowers and stuffed animals. I felt sick. I kept reading. The mall had reopened 6 months later after repairs, but that section was always considered unlucky. Stores didn't last there, people complained about strange sounds and cold spots. Eventually, they just stopped leasing that part of the mall altogether. That night, I almost called in. I didn't want to go back, but part of me thought maybe knowing the history would make it easier. It didn't. The motion sensors went off as usual. The laughter came through the vents, louder than before, more insistent. I stayed in the security office with the door locked and tried to ignore it. But around 3 a.m., I heard something new, singing.
A children's song, distorted and broken, coming through the speakers of the camera system. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. I ripped the plug out of the wall. The monitors went dark. The singing stopped. I sat in the silence, breathing hard, and decided right then that I was done. I'd finished the shift and quit. I didn't care if I had to find another job. Nothing was worth this. The last hour dragged on forever. I kept the lights on in the office and the door locked, waiting for dawn. Around 6:30, just as the sky started to lighten outside, I heard a soft sound, a squeak, like something rubbing against glass. I looked up. The security booth is surrounded by windows on 3 sides, so you can see out into the mall. I keep them clean, or at least I used to. As I watched, a small handprint appeared on the glass directly in front of me. Then another, and another. They were appearing from the inside, pressed against the glass like someone was standing in the booth with me, trying to get my attention. Small hands, child-sized. They kept multiplying, covering the glass in smudged prints, overlapping and frantic. I grabbed my keys and ran. I didn't stop until I was outside in the parking lot, gasping in the cold morning air. I called my supervisor and told him I quit. I didn't go back for my last paycheck. I didn't care. They finally demolished Westfield Plaza 6 months later. I saw it on the news. Part of me was relieved, but sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I still hear it, faint and far away, like it's coming from another room. Children laughing, echoing through invisible vents, playing games I'll never understand. I've worked a graveyard shift at the Crossroads Gas and Go for almost 6 years now. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And honestly, I prefer the quiet. No crowds, no small talk, just me and the hum of the refrigerators and whatever trucker or insomniac happens to roll through between midnight and dawn. You see some weird stuff working nights on a rural highway, but you learn to shrug it off. Drunks, people having breakdowns, the occasional tweaker looking for a bathroom. Part of the job. That night started like any other. I'd restocked the cigarettes, cleaned the coffee station, and settled in behind the counter with a podcast playing through my earbuds. The clock read 2:28 when I saw the headlights cutting through the darkness outside. They moved slow, almost hesitant, before finally pulling up to pump 4. I glanced at the security monitor. The car was old, maybe 80s model, sedan of some kind. Hard to tell the exact make under all that mud. It was caked on thick, covering the windows, the doors, everything. For a second, I thought maybe they'd been off-roading, but we're in flat country out here. Nearest dirt road is miles away, and it hadn't rained in over a week. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. Even from the grainy feed, I could see something was off. His clothes were dark, plastered to his body like he'd just climbed out of a swimming pool. Water dripped from his hair, his sleeves, pooling on the concrete around his feet. He stood there for a moment, swaying slightly, then started walking toward the station. I pulled out my earbuds and straightened up, watching through the glass as he approached. His gait was unsteady, shuffling, like each step took effort. When he pushed through the door, the bell chimed, and I got my first real look at him. Mid-50s maybe, thin face, eyes that seemed too wide and too empty at the same time. His clothes weren't just wet, they were dripping, leaving a trail of water across the tile floor. He smelled like stagnant pond water and something else, something rotten underneath. He stopped a few feet from the counter and just stared at me. Didn't blink, didn't move. I waited for him to say something, ask for the bathroom, request a pack of cigarettes, anything. Finally, I broke the silence. "Can I help you with something?" His mouth opened, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I can't find my wife." I nodded slowly, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Okay, did she wander off? Is she in the car?" He shook his head, water droplets flinging from his hair. "She was in the car. We went off the road. I got out, but I can't find her. I need to find her." The way he said it made my skin crawl. There was no panic in his voice, no urgency, Just this flat, mechanical repetition, like he was reading from a script he'd memorized years ago. "Sir, are you hurt? Do you need me to call someone?" He didn't answer. He turned his head slowly, scanning the store like he was looking for something specific. Then he looked back at me. "Have you seen her? Brown hair, blue dress, she was in the car." I glanced at the security monitor again. The sedan was still sitting at pump 4, lights off now, just a dark shape in the fluorescent glow. "Is she still in the car? Do you want me to check?" He tilted his head, considering this. "I got out. She didn't. I need to find her." This was going nowhere. I decided to call the non-emergency line, let the sheriff's department sort it out. Maybe he was in shock. Maybe he was having some kind of mental health crisis. Either way, I wasn't equipped to handle it. I reached for the phone, and when I looked back up, he was gone. The door hadn't chimed, there was no sound of footsteps, he'd just vanished. I rushed around the counter and out the front entrance, looking left and right. The parking lot was empty, except for the sedan at pump 4. I walked toward it, my breath fogging in the cold night air. The closer I got, the more wrong it looked. The mud wasn't mud, it was algae, thick green slime coating every surface. The windows were opaque with it. I wiped a section of the driver's side window with my sleeve, trying to peer inside. It was too dark to see anything clearly, but I could make out the vague shape of the interior. Old upholstery, cracked dashboard, no one inside. I walked around the car. Water was still dripping from the undercarriage, forming puddles that reflected the overhead lights. I tried the door handle. Locked. All of them were locked. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight to get a better look through the windshield. The steering wheel was covered in the same green slime, the seats were rotted through, and there, on the passenger side, I saw it. A woman's shoe, small and blue, sitting upright on the floor mat. My hands were shaking as I backed away. I returned to the station and immediately pulled up the security footage. I rewound to 2:30 the moment the car had pulled in. I watched the empty parking lot, the timestamp ticking forward, 2:31, 2:32, nothing. Then I appeared on screen, walking out from behind the counter toward the door. I watched myself push through the entrance and step outside, stopping just beyond the threshold. I stood there for almost 3 minutes, staring at pump 4, talking to nothing. My mouth was moving, but the car was never there. The man was never there. Just me, alone, having a conversation with empty air. I felt the room tilt. I sat down hard on the stool, trying to process what I was seeing. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the camera had a blind spot. Maybe the angle was wrong. But I'd seen the water on the floor. I'd seen him standing right in front of me. I got up and walked to where he had been standing. The tile was dry. No puddles, no wet footprints, nothing. I checked the entrance. Dry. I went back outside to pump 4. The car was gone. Not driven away, just gone, like it had never existed. The rest of my shift was a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my grip on reality. When my replacement showed up at 7, I didn't mention what happened. What would I even say? I left as soon as I could and drove home in a daze. The next morning I woke up to my phone buzzing with notifications. Local news app. I opened it. The headline read, "Vehicle recovered from Lake Pearson after anonymous tip." There was a photo. An old sedan, 80s model, being pulled from the water by a tow truck. It was covered in algae, dripping and rotting. The article said it had been submerged for years, possibly over a decade. 2 bodies inside, a man and a woman. Police were working to identify them. I recognized the car immediately. Same make, same model. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. They'd found it in Lake Pearson, 5 miles west of the station. A week passed. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, that my mind had played tricks on me, that stress and lack of sleep had conjured the whole thing. I almost believed it until Friday night, around 2:30 a.m., the station phone rang. I answered out of habit. "Crossroads, gas and go." There was silence on the other end, just faint static and the distant sound of water. Dripping, maybe, or waves lapping against something hollow. Then I heard his voice, that same flat, hoarse whisper. She's still out there. The line went dead. I stood there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone, feeling the weight of those words settle over me like cold water. I haven't answered the phone since.
I'd been driving long haul for 17 years. You rack up enough miles, you see pretty much everything. Accidents, breakdowns, weather that'll make you question your sanity. You learn the routes like the back of your hand, know every truck stop, every rest area, every place where you can pull over for a few hours of sleep without getting hassled. Mile marker 89 on I-40 was one of my regular stops. Small rest area, nothing fancy. A couple of picnic tables, vending machines, restrooms. Quiet. That's what I liked about it. I'd usually hit it around 1 or 2 in the morning, right when the fatigue started creeping in and the white lines on the road began to blur together. Coffee, bathroom break, maybe 15 minutes to stretch my legs before getting back on the road. I'd been stopping there twice a week for the better part of 3 years. Never had a problem. Never saw anything unusual. That changed on a Thursday in early November. I pulled in just after 1:30, the parking lot empty except for my rig and one sedan parked near the far end by the tree line. I didn't think much of it. People sleep in their cars at rest stops all the time. I killed the engine, grabbed my thermos, and climbed down from the cab. The air was cold and damp, that pre-winter chill that gets into your bones. The overhead lights buzzed and flickered, casting uneven shadows across the pavement. I was halfway to the restroom building when I saw her. A woman, standing near the corner of the building, partially obscured by the shadow of the overhang. She was wearing something pale, white or light gray, hard to tell in the dim light. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders. She was just standing there, completely still, facing my direction. I slowed down, unsure if I should acknowledge her or just mind my business. Then she raised her arm and waved. Not a casual greeting, a deliberate, urgent gesture, the kind that says, "I need help." I changed direction and walked toward her. "You okay? Need something?" She didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there with her arms still raised. As I got closer, maybe 20 feet away, I could make out more details. Her clothes were definitely white, some kind of dress or long shirt. Her feet were bare. Bare feet in November at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere? That set off alarm bells. "Ma'am? Are you hurt?" I took another few steps. She lowered her arms slowly. I was close enough now to see her face, or where her face should have been. The shadow from the overhang was wrong, too dark, making it impossible to see her features clearly. I stopped, suddenly uncertain. Something felt off. The air around her seemed colder, and there was a smell. Faint but distinct. Stagnant water and earth. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it toward her. The beam cut through the darkness. She was gone. Not walked away, not ducked around the corner, just gone. I stood there for a solid minute, sweeping the light back and forth, checking behind the building, around the sides. Nothing. The parking lot was empty. Even the sedan I'd seen earlier was gone, though I hadn't heard it start or leave. I felt my hairs on my neck stand up. I'm not a superstitious guy. I don't believe in ghosts or spirits or anything like that, but I couldn't explain what I'd just seen. I hurried to the restroom, did my business as quickly as possible, and got back to the truck. I sat in the cab for a few minutes, trying to shake the feeling. Eventually, I convinced myself I'd been more tired than I thought, that my eyes had played tricks on me. I started the engine and pulled back onto the highway. It was maybe 10 miles down the road when I remembered my dash cam. I'd installed it a few years back after a close call with an aggressive driver. It recorded constantly, overwriting old footage every few days. I made a mental note to check it when I got home, see if it had caught anything. The next morning, I was unloading at a warehouse in Little Rock when a state trooper pulled into the lot. He parked near my truck and got out, walking over with that casual but purposeful stride cops have. My first thought was that I'd done something wrong, missed a way station or had a tail light out. "Morning," he said, tipping his hat. "You drive I-40 regularly?" "Yeah, a couple times a week." "Why?" "You stopped at the rest area near mile marker 89 last night." My stomach tightened.
I did. Around 1:30. Something wrong? He pulled out a small notebook, flipped it open. We're looking for information on a missing woman. Caucasian, mid-20s, last seen at that rest area about a month ago. White dress, brown hair. You see anyone matching that description? I felt cold. What time was she last seen? Call came in around 2 a.m. Someone reported seeing a woman standing near the restroom building looking distressed. By the time units arrived, she was gone. No trace. We've been checking with anyone who stops there regularly, seeing if they've seen her. I didn't know what to say. I told him about what I'd seen, the woman waving, how she disappeared when I got close. He wrote it all down, asked me a few more questions, then thanked me and left. I sat in my truck afterwards, staring at nothing, trying to process it. A woman had gone missing from that exact spot, and I had seen something, someone. When I got home that evening, the first thing I did was pull the SD card from my dash cam and plug it into my laptop. I found the footage from the night before and started watching. There I was, pulling into the rest area, parking, climbing out from the cab. The camera angle showed the parking lot and part of the restroom building. I watched myself walk toward it, then change direction. I was clearly reacting to something, moving toward the corner of the building, but the camera showed nothing there, just empty space and shadows. I kept watching. I saw myself stop, pull out my phone, shine the light around, then hurry back to the truck. The footage continued as I started the engine and pulled out. The camera was mounted on the dashboard facing forward, but it also caught the side mirrors in the frame. I almost missed it. As the truck rolled forward and the rest area disappeared behind me, there was a brief moment where the passenger side mirror came into clear view. And in that reflection, just for 2 or 3 seconds, I saw her, standing in the bed of my truck, right behind the cab, white dress, brown hair, staring directly at the camera. Then the angle shifted, and she was gone. I watched that section over and over, frame by frame. She was there, clear as day, standing in my truck as I drove away from the rest area. I didn't sweep that night. I kept thinking about her face in the mirror, the expression I'd seen in those few frames. She didn't look angry or scary. She looked lost, sad, like she was trying to tell me something but couldn't find the words. I called the state police the next day and told them about the footage. They came by to pick up a copy. The trooper I'd talked to before seemed unsettled when he watched it, but he didn't say much. Just thanked me and said they'd follow up if they found anything. My next run came 6 days later. Same route, same schedule. I debated taking a different road, avoiding the rest area altogether, but that would have added an hour to my drive, and I was already cutting it close on my delivery window. I told myself I'd just drive past, not stop, keep going to the next rest area 20 miles up. But as I approached mile marker 89, I saw something that made me slow down. There were flowers on the shoulder, right at the entrance to the rest area. A small memorial, fresh bouquets tied together with ribbon, leaning against the mile marker post. I pulled over, not into the rest area itself, but on the shoulder just before it. I walked over. There were maybe a dozen bunches of flowers, carnations and roses, still vibrant and new. Someone had placed them recently, probably that day. There was a small card tucked into one of the bouquets. I picked it up. It read, "Sarah, we miss you. Rest in peace." Sarah. She had a name. I stood there for a long time looking at those flowers, thinking about the woman I had seen, the woman in the mirror. I wanted to believe there was a rational explanation, that she'd wandered off and was still out there somewhere, alive. But deep down, I knew. I had seen her ghost. Whatever had happened to her at that rest area, she was still there, still trying to get someone's attention, still waving for help that would never come. I don't stop at mile marker 89 anymore. I push through, drive the extra distance to the next rest area even if it means fighting fatigue, but every time I pass those flowers, I slow down. And sometimes, just for a second, I swear I see her in my mirror, standing on the shoulder, watching the trucks go by, waiting for someone who'll finally stop and help her find her way home.
I've been cleaning office buildings for 12 years now. It's honest work, decent pay, and I don't have to deal with people. By the time I clock in at 11 p.m., everyone's gone home. Just me, my cart, and 6 floors of empty cubicles and conference rooms. The Meridian Tower, downtown, was one of my regular contracts. 5 nights a week, I'd work my way from the lobby up to the executive suites on the 10th floor. Vacuuming, emptying trash, wiping down surfaces. Predictable, mindless, exactly how I liked it. The 8th floor was always my least favorite. I couldn't tell you why at first. Something about it just felt off. The air was colder there, even though the climate control was supposedly uniform throughout the building. The lights took longer to flicker on when I hit the switches. And it was too quiet. I know that sounds stupid, an empty building is supposed to be quiet, but this was different. A heavy kind of silence that pressed against your ears and made you aware of every small sound you made. It was a Tuesday, in late September, when I first saw him. I'd finished the 7th floor and wheeled my cart into the 8th floor hallway around 3 in the morning. Most of the offices up there were dark, but as I passed by 804, I noticed a light on inside. The door was open about halfway. I could see someone sitting at the desk, hunched over a computer, typing. I hesitated. It wasn't completely unusual for someone to work late, but 3 a.m. was pushing it. I knocked lightly on the door frame. "Hey, just so you know, I'll be cleaning out here. I can come back if you need more time." He didn't respond. Didn't even look up. Just kept typing, his fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. I could hear the keys clicking. A steady, rapid-fire rhythm. He was wearing a dark suit, slightly rumpled, tie loosened. From where I stood, I couldn't see his face clearly, just the top of his head and his hunched shoulders. I tried again. "Sir, I'm going to be vacuuming soon. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Nothing. Not even a pause in the typing. I felt a flicker of irritation. I get it, people are focused on their work, but a simple acknowledgement would have been nice. I decided to leave him alone and work on the other offices first. Maybe he'd be gone by the time I circled back. I cleaned the break room, emptied the trash in the cubicle farm, wiped down the bathrooms. It took me about 45 minutes. When I came back past 804, the light was still on. I peeked in. He was still there, same position, still typing. He hadn't moved at all. Same hunched posture, same rapid clicking of keys. Something about it bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. I decided to skip that office for the night. Let him work. I'd mention it to building management in the morning. The next night, I ran into Derek, one of the other janitors who worked the adjacent building. We usually crossed paths in the parking garage around our lunch breaks. I mentioned the guy working late on 8, asked if he'd ever seen anyone up there at that hour. He gave me a strange look. 8th floor? You sure? Yeah, 804 specifically. Guy in a seat, typing like his life depended on it. He was quiet for a moment, then pulled out his phone and scrolled through something. He turned the screen toward me. It was a news article from 5 years ago. "Corporate executive dies at desk," read the headline. There was a photo. A man in his 40s, thin face, receding hairline. I felt my stomach drop. It was him. Same suit, same general build. That's Mitchell Carver. Worked for some investment firm that used to lease the 8th floor. Had a heart attack at his desk one night. They found him the next morning, dead for hours apparently. Still sitting upright, hands on the keyboard. I stared at the photo, my mouth dry. Which office? Article says 804. I didn't want to believe it. I'm not superstitious. I don't believe in ghosts or spirits or any of that. There had to be a rational explanation. Maybe it was someone else, someone who just looked similar. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me in the dim light and the exhaustion of a graveyard shift. But that night, when I reached the 8th floor, I found myself walking towards 804 before I could talk myself out of it. The door was closed this time. The lights were off. I stood there for a long moment, my hand on the doorknob, debating. Finally, I pushed it open. The office was empty, dark. I flipped the light switch. A standard corporate setup. Desk, computer, filing cabinet, couple of chairs for visitors. Everything neat, and impersonal. I walked in slowly, scanning the space. Nothing unusual. The computer was off, monitor dark. The chair was pushed in. I laughed at myself, a short, nervous sound that echoed in the small room. I was being ridiculous. I turned to leave, and that's when the chair moved. Just a small rotation, maybe 15 degrees, like someone had bumped it. But I was standing 6 feet away. I froze, watching it. The chair stopped moving, settling with a faint creak. The room was completely still. Then, I heard it. Typing. Faint, but unmistakable. The rapid click, click, click of fingers on a keyboard. I spun around. The computer was still off. The keyboard sat untouched on the desk, but the sound continued, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once, filling that small office with that same urgent rhythm I'd heard the night before. I backed out of the room quickly, pulling the door shut behind me. My hands were shaking. I left my cart in the hallway and took the stairs down, not caring about finishing my shift. I called my supervisor from the parking lot and told her I felt sick, needed to leave early. She wasn't happy, but she let me go. I almost quit. I spent the next day trying to convince myself to find a different contract, a different building, anything. But bills don't pay themselves, and I couldn't afford to be unemployed. So I went back. I told myself I'd just avoid the 8th floor, work around it. Plenty of other areas to clean. For 3 nights, that's exactly what I did. I'd take the elevator from 7 to 9, skipping 8 entirely. It worked. No incidents, no strange sounds. I started to relax, started to think maybe I had overreacted. On the 4th night, I made a mistake. I left my mop bucket on the 8th floor. I'd been using it on 7 and must have rolled it into the elevator out of habit when I went up to 9. I didn't realize until I was halfway through the 10th floor when I needed it. I considered just leaving it, coming back for it at the end of my shift, but that felt cowardly. It was just a bucket. I took the elevator down. The doors opened onto the 8th floor. The hallway was dim, only the emergency lights on. I could see my bucket about 20 feet away, right where I'd left it near the elevator bank. I stepped out, grabbed the handle, and started to turn back. The bucket rolled forward on its own. Not fast, but deliberate, pulling away from my grip. I tightened my hold, but it kept moving, wheels squeaking softly against the tile. It was pulling me down the hallway, towards the offices, towards 804. I let go. The bucket continued rolling, slowing as it approached the closed door of 804, finally stopping directly in front of it. I stood there, paralyzed, watching. The door was dark, nothing moved. Then, inside the office, I heard a computer chime, the startup sound. I could see lights spilling from under the door, the glow of a monitor turning on. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in the elevator and leave, but something compelled me forward. I walked to the door, each step feeling like moving through water. I reached for the handle and pushed it open. The computer was on. The monitor displayed a document, white text on a blue background. Just one line, centered on the screen in large font. "Working late again, Hannah." My name. It knew my name. I stumbled backward, hitting the doorframe. The typing started again, louder this time, aggressive, filling the room with that frantic clicking. The chair spun slowly, a full rotation, as if someone invisible had just stood up from it. I ran. I left the bucket, left my cart, left everything. I took the stairs down all 10 flights and didn't stop until I was outside, gasping in the cold night air. I never went back. I called my supervisor the next morning and quit over the phone. She tried to convince me to stay, said I was one of her best workers, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. They found a replacement for the Meridian Tower contract within a week. I heard through Derek that the new cleaner quit after 3 nights, said the 8th floor gave them the creeps. Another one lasted a month before requesting a transfer to a different building. The pattern continued. No one stays long at Meridian Tower. I work at a shopping complex now. Retail spaces, wide open, always bright. No corporate offices, no 8th floors,
No dark rooms with computers that turn themselves on. I don't work late anymore. I traded my graveyard shift for evenings. I clock out by midnight, go home, sleep with the lights on, and I never, ever sit at a computer in the dark.